With colleges switching to remote learning for the rest of the semester, staff members were left wondering what would happen to them when the universities closed. Harvard University was not going to pay their subcontracted employees like security guards and cafeteria workers emergency pay. The university did reverse course after an outcry about the decision, agreeing to pay full pay and benefits until the semester ended.
Friend of the show, Oren Cass, has a situation. Some of the conversation around it serves as a case study in our current ills in our society and our economy. Oren is, of course, the executive director of the American Compas, and he joins us now via Skype. Great to see you, Oren. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Oren, a lot of this was precipitated by an op-ed written by Tyler Cowen. He's a famous libertarian and a blogger, and he basically wrote a column saying that Harvard, what makes Harvard a great institution is not its ability to pay its workers. It doesn't even have an obligation to do so, these subcontracted employees, but the ability in order to conduct life-changing world research. Of course, you had a rebuttal to that. I just want to give you the opportunity to respond.
Yeah, sure. So, I think Tyler's argument was that what we value most from universities is their investment in research and in teaching. And so we should want them to spend their money on that. And any dollar they spend on anything else, say providing for food service workers who aren't actively working in the cafeteria, is therefore a bad use of their money. I think there are a few problems with that. One is if you look at what universities do spend their money on, they've obviously found lots of things to spend on that have nothing to do with the core teaching or research responsibility. So I'm not sure why paying food service workers is where we should draw the line. But more importantly, I think it really misunderstands the relationship between employees and employers. Tyler said Harvard has no more obligation to these workers than it does to some random person on the other side of the world that it might give charity to. And I don't think that's right. I think when an institution hires people, it creates a mutual obligation. It creates an obligation from the workers to invest their time and do their best in their jobs, and it creates an obligation on behalf of the institution. Those workers aren't just random people. They are Harvard staff. And so I think absolutely, if Harvard can afford to, Harvard has a responsibility to look out for them. And certainly with the size of Harvard's endowment and what they charge for a semester, Harvard can afford to behave responsibly here.
I think Harvard is not too hard up right now. They can certainly afford to pay their food service workers. I mean, it's outrageous to me that this argument would even be made. But there's also, it seems to me, a conservative principle around community and the importance of taking care of those in your community by hiring someone, by bringing someone onto the campus, the knowledge community or whatever you want to call it. It seems like that also creates a responsibility and an extra, I don't want to call it a burden, but an extra responsibility to make sure that these people are treated with respect and fairly.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it to your point, it's sort of a very conservative point that what makes society work, that produces wealth at the end of the day, isn't just spending as much money as you can on research or on teaching. It's also about a society that works well, that people believe they're going to be looked out for, that people are looking out for each other. And so a lot of Tyler's analysis on a lot of subjects focuses on this question of just, well, what is the policy that will generate the most growth? Because whatever generates the most growth is going to be best for the most people in the long run. But I just think it's a lot more complicated than that. I think what's actually going to generate a good society, and for that matter, generate the most growth in the long run, isn't just spend all your money a specific way today. It's make sure we have a society, make sure we have communities, make sure we have families that are going to allow both people and the economy to thrive.
Mm-hmm. And Oren, what does this entire episode tell us about the way that the right has been thinking about economic issues now for quite some time? Because I think that's even more interesting debate. It's like, what does this tell us about how the right has thought about it and how it should be thinking about it in the future?
Well, I think it gets to a flaw in how a lot of folks on the right of center have thought about these kinds of questions in the recent past, which is to take a very libertarian attitude, or what I would call fairly market fundamentalist, and just say all we need to focus on is making sure that we have the market able to operate freely and generate growth, and then we will prosper. And there's some element of truth to that. We should want our markets to operate well and to grow, and that does help us prosper. But what I think it really missed was something that you're now hearing more of from the right of center, and I think is really important, which is it's not just about whatever is going to generate the most growth next week, and that good public policy and responsible behavior from private actors isn't just about what gets you the most dollars tomorrow. It has to be about a broader concept of the common good, and trying to move forward in a way that we think is actually going to lead to a prosperous society.
Oren, was there much critique from libertarians of the bailout package that passed? I mean, you're talking about multi-trillion dollars that the government is basically going to have complete authority over which businesses live and benefit and which ones die. Something that I'm personally deeply concerned about that we covered very critically here. I could have missed it, but I didn't hear a whole lot of complaints coming from the libertarian right on that.
There hasn't been a lot. I mean, obviously the package passed 96-0 in the Senate. I think generally speaking, there's a view in the right of center, and even with very free market economists and libertarians, that this is an extraordinary time, and an extraordinary time calls for extraordinary measures. You know, I think there's also actually an interesting and important argument that's quite libertarian, that is, it's actually government that's causing this economic crisis in a sense. We are actively shutting down businesses for the greater good, for the sake of public health. And so if the government is going to tell you can't operate your business anymore, then that actually does kind of create a responsibility and a legitimate reason to help provide support. Now, how you do that, whether you find ways to really make sure you're getting money to the people who need it and not just creating slush funds, is incredibly important. And so I think that is something concern has been raised about on both the left and the right. And hopefully it's something we'll get a lot of scrutiny of as the money goes out the door.
Not holding my breath on that one. Oren, thanks.
Thanks,
Great
Oren.
to have you.
Great talking to you as always.
Good to see you.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.